So we've been using this setup function and draw functions in p5js, which is a basic structure of any sketch that you create. So we'll just take a moment to look at what these are and how they are different. So these two functions are what gets executed when you run a sketch. So we create canvas at 400 by 400 and we set the background color to 220. And here's the difference. Whatever you place inside setup will run only once when the sketch is first run. So it only runs once. That's the important part. And then draw function sort of takes over and continues to run from top to bottom, line by line, every single frame. So let's go back to setup. So these create canvas, we only need to create the canvas once per sketch, right? You don't need to create canvas every single frame. So that's why we place this create canvas in the setup. Probably I can do the same thing with color mode, something like HSB. Normally you will set the color mode once and keep using the same color system throughout your sketch. Of course, if you're going to change the color mode while you're running the sketch, then you could also put the color mode and maybe update it back to RGB if you want. But the point here is that any code you will place in the setup, they will only run once at the beginning of running this sketch. And once you start to learn how to use variables, this is where we will normally initialize those variables. So when the sketch runs, it will run all the code in the setup line by line, and then draw function will keep running. The default frame rate of p5js sketch is 60 frames per second. So whatever you place it inside draw function will be running line by line 60 times per second. So if you're going to get any kind of user input or have any kind of animation, this is where you want to place them so that it can get updated multiple times per second. So let me give you a simple example. So for instance, I'm going to remove background function from draw and set the background from setup. So here, sort of dark red, and run it. Oh, let me also just remove color mode for now. So I'm just going to keep using RGB. So there you go. So setup runs and it creates canvas, and then it sets the background to dark red. And then the draw function takes over, but there's no code inside, so we can continue to see the same background we just set once. But what happens if I also set the background but to a different color in this draw function? Let me stop the sketch and rerun it. We don't even see the red background because the first frame, it will create canvas, set the background to red, but then right after that, draw background will sort of override the previous color and then continues to run every single frame. And that's why we only see this green background. So you have to decide what kind of data or what kind of functions you only need to run once, and what other kind of data or drawing codes you need to continue to update. Another simple example I can show you is by using console.log function. So this function will log a message to this console area. I'm gonna just type hello and run it. And the message hello gets printed only once because this function is called in the setup. And what about I print another message, but this time in the draw function? Say hi and run it again. So hello ran once, and then the message hi gets printed again and again and again. And one more example before we finish. So let me set back the background color in the setup to something like to blue, and then I'm going to draw ellipse inside draw, but instead of setting hard-coded value for its position, I'm going to use the current mouse X and Y location to determine where to draw this ellipse. And let's think about it before I sort of interact with the sketch. So background is set to blue only once at the beginning, so that's why it's painted with blue here. And then draw takes over. It doesn't have any background function, so it does not sort of clear the background and repaint over and over again. It just goes directly to drawing ellipse, and this ellipse is being drawn multiple times per second. And because I'm using mouse X and mouse Y, it is also tracking my current mouse position multiple times per second. So if I move my mouse here, draw function is keep adding new ellipse many times and tracking my current mouse location. So compare this sketch with this one. I'm just going to cut this background function out of the setup and paste it in the draw right before I draw an ellipse. Then when I move my mouse now, I only see a single ellipse. That's because every frame we paint the background blue and then draw an ellipse at my mouse location. And next frame, it paints over, so whatever was drawn before will all get sort of painted over with the new blue background. And then another ellipse gets drawn on top of it. So that happens many, many times. It's just so fast, so we don't even see it. And that's how we can use setup function and draw functions in p5js.